Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. This is the Call conference operator. Welcome to the presentation of the results of the Acea Group. As a reminder, all participants are in listen-only mode. After the presentation, there will be an opportunity to ask questions. Should anyone need assistance during the conference call, they may signal an operator by pressing star and 0 on their telephone. At this point, I will hand you over to the IR manager, Ms. Risultati. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, and thank you very much for connecting to the presentation of the results as to the 30th of June 2020. The CEO, Mr. Gola, and Mr. Pari, the CFO, will give you the highlights and the results, and then we shall have a Q&A session. Well, thank you very much, Eva, and welcome to you all, and thank you for connecting to this presentation. Now, the Board of Directors approved today the results of the quarter. Our results show a significant improvement versus last year and also versus the second quarter of this year, despite the health emergency and the problems related to COVID-19. In particular, we witnessed an increase of Ebitda, which was driven by regulated business, which also saw a considerable growth in investments. The main highlights, you see them on page 2. Ebitda 569 million, plus 13% versus the first half of 2019. Please note that this growth is also supported by M&A activity and by acquisitions and the consolidations we've made, but net of M&A activities, net of acquisitions, and net of the impact of the loss of CIP6 in the environment business, the Ebitda grew by 8% organic growth. So a very strong trend. EBIT 277 million euros, up 7% versus first half of 2019. Net profit up 1%, 144 million, and this is a different trend versus the first quarter of the year. Capex 411 million, up 20% versus the first half of 2019. Let's now look at the key transactions that were completed in the first 6 months of the year. I tried to summarize them. In January, we issued a bond worth 500 million with a term of 9 years, with the lowest interest rates to be paid by the Acea Group, 0.50%. We also signed an agreement to acquire 51% of the Alto Sangro distribution gas, making us stronger in the gas distribution business, especially in the Abruzzo region. And for this deal, we received the antitrust approval, and in the next few days we will close probably the deal. Then we acquired 60% of the Ferrocart Group. This is a company that owns 3 companies, Ferrocart, Cavallari, and Multigrill, a company for the waste management, and particular for waste storage, treatment and sorting plants, handling 145,000 tons per year. Then we acquired 70% of Simam in May, a leader in the design, construction, and operation of liquid waste treatment plants, and also in the delivery of environmental and remediation projects, offering integrated high-tech solutions. This company will be very, very important also for our engineering business. And then we continued with the acquisition of photovoltaic plants. We now have a total installed capacity of 45 megawatt of secondary photovoltaic power. And so we will be able to achieve our target that was 50 megawatt in 2022. And then we continued with the development projects on the primary market. We have already been authorized 40 megawatts that will be getting in operation next few months in a pipeline of over 400 megawatt. Then Fitch has confirmed the rating despite the COVID-19 impact. So Fitch confirmed Acea's rating of triple B plus with a stable outlook in May, despite the downgrade on the Italian debt. And then recently we got an increase or an improvement of our outlook from Standard Ethics from stable to positive. The rating is EE minus, and so we are confident that we will be able to improve our rating here as well in the next 18 months. So let's see now the summary of the main drivers of our main business, page 3. As to the EBITDA, all of the business areas showed to be resilient to the crisis. The group is growing mainly in the regulated business. The EBITDA from regulated businesses account for 86% of all the EBITDA, but also non-regulated businesses showed, and we shall see that later on, showed quite high level of resilience. As to the critical issue, that is the absorption of the net working capital as an effect of COVID-19 related lockdown, the results that we have in the first 6 months are better than the forecasts that we shared at the end of the first quarter. If you remember, we expected at the end of the second quarter to have an increase in absorption of net working capital of around 150 million euros because of COVID, whereas now we are reporting an absorption of the net working capital of 120 million euros. Only 60 million are related to payment arrears from customers and 16 million related to a deferred collection of the regulatory items to be almost entirely recovered by the end of 2020. This is what we expect. So on the basis of all this, Acea has to have a sound financial structure, a high liquidity, which allows us to cover all the debt maturities beyond 2024, which is the horizon of the new business plan that we will present in autumn. On the basis of this, we reviewed our guidance, especially the Ebitda guidance, considering the results of the first half of 2020. So we raised our guidance, which used to be before between 6 and 8%. At the moment, our guidance is that of having our Ebitda grow above 8%. We're not giving you a precise data because we do not know at the moment how much it will be at the end of the year. As to, or rather, we do not want to share our final target for the year. And then as to CapEx, around 800 million euros, perhaps there will be something more because of investments in the regulated businesses. And then a net debt, which is confirmed between 3.45 billion and 3.55 billion. So we confirm the guidance about the net working capital. Because of the COVID effect, the absorption can be around 40-50 million, and we'll be able to remain inside this range, perhaps towards the top part or the higher part of this range. Now, page. If you go to page 6, you see the Ebitda. So I do apologize, I probably skipped a few pages. Let's see page 4. Yes, let's see the executive summary on page 4. Well, as you know, what have we done within our group to manage the COVID-19 emergency? Well, first of all, we started to take care of the health of all of our employees, and we immediately we asked our employees to work from home. Our physical systems proved to be very resilient, and we were capable to make all of our employees to work remotely, and our systems very well supported us. Then we wanted, of course, to guarantee the continuity and the efficiency of all the services offered and provided, and we managed to achieve a very high level of quality. Of course, we asked our employees on the field to be present and to continue to work efficiently. The effect of all this is shown by the number of investments that we made in the first half of the year, despite the lockdown and despite not being able to open new building sites. We concentrated our investments on the maintenance of our networks, especially the water networks and the power networks. And at the same time, we kept a very strong dialogue with the stakeholders of the group. Then once the critical stage of the lockdown was over, in order to manage safely the return of our employees to our offices, we launched a plan of serological testing on all employees. So far, some 1,900 tests have been carried out. This is very important for the safety of our employees, and we are now launching a return plan, which will be implemented after the summer. We will continue to have people working remotely and in the offices as well, in a very planned manner. Now, in this moment, we are certainly very much concerned about what our country is going through, and of course we are interested in the new decrees that are going to be issued in order to sustain the recovery of this country, which we hope is going to be effective. And it is quite clear that part of the funds that are going to be earmarked and diverted are going to be reserved or diverted to infrastructures which are part of Acea core business, and we know that this will certainly help the country invest in smart cities, electric mobility, water infrastructures, to try and reduce the infrastructure gap as well. So we believe that we can certainly play a central role in the restart of the country, and we certainly are very much committed in reducing the infrastructure gap, above all in the water sector, especially in the south of Italy. And then we are committed to improving the quality of the services offered, and also committed to the ongoing delivery of digitalization. The simplifications decree to simplify bureaucracy that was issued a few weeks ago. The doubling of the capacity of the Peschiera aqueduct is included in that decree as a priority project, and so the development of this project will start, and we certainly will have a very active role in that. Now, if you get to page 5 of the presentation, you have the financial highlights of the first half of 2020, which we have already anticipated. Now, the profit and loss account is certainly driven by the regulated businesses, and also non-regulated businesses have recovered. Now, you have to take into account the consolidation of the Fiora aqueduct, and then we have the new acquisitions that we carried out, in particular in the field of the environment and the photovoltaic business. Consolidated revenues, 1,622,000,000 euros, plus 4.4%. Ebitda, 268.7 million, plus 13.2%, EBIT at 277.4 million, plus 6.6%, and group net profit 143.8 million euros, up 0.6% versus the previous year. Now, investments have 411 million euros, up 20%. Now, below you see net debt as at June 2020, 3,527 billions, and you can see it's up 24% year on year. Now, if you go to page 6, you see the EBITDA. The EBITDA is now at 569 million euros. 50% is due to the water business, and this percentage is growing, and not only because of the growth of the individual campus, but also because of the aqueduct of Del Fiora, which contributed 31 million euros, and then energy infrastructure 36%, trading 5%, environment 5%, and then we have minor businesses. Well, this result, as we said before, was also supported by the new acquisitions, and in particular, as you can see on the right table, we have the consolidation of Consortia Agua Azul, 5 million, and then the consolidation of ADF, 31 million euros basically, and then Ferrocar, Cavallari, Multigreen, 1.6 million euros, and then the MAP, 2 million euros, and then
I driver di crescita sono fondamentalmente legati tutto all'applicazione del metodo tariffario del terzo periodo 2020-2023, secondo la delibera dell'ARERA del 2019. E quindi abbiamo qui certamente un effetto di investimenti in crescita che hanno trainato il risultato, e devo dire con molto importante. We are reconnecting the texter line. Just a moment to accept this. Anche la sala è cambiata. Tutto. E io non riesco a collegare. Sono rimaste 2 lì collegate su me. Non so se non si capisce se
Now we do apologize. We had a minor technical problem. Let's start from page 7. The highlights of the water business. Here you also have the gas distribution activity. We reached an agreement for the acquisition of 51% of Alto Sangro distribution gas that we will close in the next few days. As to the Ebitda growth, as we said before, a driver for growth is represented by the growth of tariffs driven by growing investments and the application of the third regulatory period for the period 2020-2023. And last year we had 17 million euro of reward for the bonus of commercial quality. This year we don't have this bonus that was offset by the recognition of new cost components, and then the land-by-land consolidation of Aquedotto del Fiora, ADF, and then the acquisition of Pescara distribution gas that was closed in March 2019. Now, if you go to page 8 of the presentation, you see the financial results of the energy infrastructure in this period. As to the highlights, we acquired a new photovoltaic plants on the secondary market, where we have a total installed capacity of 45 megawatts, and we are close to achieving our business plan target that was 50 megawatts within 2022. As to the primary market, we have already received the authorization for another 40 megawatts that we're building, and that will start operations in the next few months. And we have an overall pipeline of 400 megawatts. The Ebitda is growing here by 6.6%. Growth is driven by distribution, plus 7.8%. Generation, we have here two effects which offset each other. Photovoltaic, which was not there last year, with a photovoltaic with an Ebitda of 5 million, and we have a loss because of COVID-19 on the power generation, which suffered both the decrease of energy prices, minus 5 million, and a decrease of volumes because of lower rainfalls, negative 3 million. So overall, the generation business is stable, and we managed to make up for the loss related to COVID-19 with the new development of the photovoltaic plants. Page 9, you have the trading business, or commercial and trading business. Well, here the Ebitda is around 30 million euros, very similar to that last year, same period, 31.2 million euros. We continue to grow in this area. Our customer base is growing on the free market, and is growing by 19%, 414,000 customers for energy, and 198,000 customers for gas, so growing by 11%. This growth allowed our company to make up for the negative effects of COVID-19. Here we had strong impacts, 8.6 million less because of the COVID-19 emergency, and these basically are due to 5 million, more or less, to the energy that we had to resell on the wholesale market because it was not used. And so as a COVID emergency effect, we had a decrease of energy consumption, and we had to sell the excess energy on the market at a lower price. And then 3 million, a decrease of consumptions, especially in the business segment, and then 4 million for gas. And then we have to witness a worsening of the RCW, 4 million, because of the delay in payments, or the recognition of the delay in payments of the regulated market tariffs. Then page 10, you see the environment business, Ebitda 26.2 million against 33.5 million euros. Please remember that last year we saw the end of the CIP 6, and so the overall result is very good because we managed to offset for the 18 million of the CIP 6 incentives. Well, that was possible thanks to the acquisition of Ferrocard Cavallari Multigreen, 5 million more or less in terms of Ebitda, but also we managed to increase the tariffs and volumes of waste taken to the waste management plans. The waste management capability has grown considerably, 778,000 tons in the first half of 2020 versus 631,000 tons in the first half of 2019. At this point, I will hand you over to Mr. Pari that will lead you through the details of the P&L, cash flow and debt. Well, thank you very much, Giuseppe. Let me now move on to the next page of the presentation. Well, as to the EBIT, as you can see on page 11, in the first half of 2020, the EBIT grew by 6.6% versus last year. If you look at the different items of the EBIT, we had the growth of depreciation related to an increase in CapEx, especially in the water segment, and in the consolidation of Acquedotto del Fiora, basically as you can see, from 36 to 43 million of write-down. And then provisions, again, consolidation of ADF. Well, here you need to take into account that the COVID-19 emergency led to an increase in write-downs for the Acquedotto del Fiora. And provisions, well, here the difference is basically related to the entry in the consolidation perimeter of Acquedotto del Fiora. Now, as to the net profit, the net profit is growing versus the first quarter and versus the same period last year. Now, in order to better understand the difference between this first half and the first half of 2019, it is worth remembering that in the first half of 2019 we had a non-recurring item related to the stake in Acqua Azul Bogotá, 1.5 million euros, and then we had the presence of CIP6 incentives. Well, the end of this led to the loss of contribution in the environment business that had, of course, an impact on the net profit as well, around 13 million euros. Moreover, we have the impact of consolidation in the first half of 2020 related to Acquedotto del Fiora and the Consorzio Acqua Azul. Well, the impact of this consolidation explain the difference that you see on the net profit. If you go to the next slide, page 12 of the presentation, here you see CapEx. We continue to grow our investments in regulated activities, which account for 88% of our investments, and non-regulated businesses investments account for 12%. Now, as you can see the detail below, the greatest amount of CapEx was made in the water and energy infrastructure businesses. As we heard from the CEO before, the growth of investments shows the resilience of the group and the capability of the group to focus on investments which are important for maintenance of the water and energy distribution networks during the COVID-19 emergency. Now, the water business saw the investments of 60.9 million euros. Please remember that here year we have Acquedotto del Fiore, 15.5 million euros. And then other activities are infrastructure activities like the widening of water pipes or sewage pipes or maintenance activities which continued during the lockdown period as well. As to the energy infrastructure business, here we focused on the strengthening and on the renewal of the network. We also continued with the resilience plan, and also we continued with our activities on the low and medium voltage networks of the group. As you can see from the detail on the slide, the other lines of business are more or less in line with last year. Commercial and trading, here we had lower costs for customer acquisition because of or related to the lockdown period, where we saw an interruption of the acquisition of new customers. And last year, on the contrary, we had a very strong activity to acquire customers and to launch new IT systems. So major investment activities were made last year here. And now we continued our investments also in the environment business, although there is a little reduction versus last year. We focused our attention on the San Vittore plant and the expansion of the Orvieto landfill. As to the overseas business, we have a reduction of our investments, which is totally related to the reduced investment in Agua de San Pedro. So lower investments are made in the period, mainly due to the COVID-19 emergency that was recorded also in those areas. And then we have an increase in investments in the corporate part is due to mainly investments on IT projects for the group. Now, if you go to page 13 of the presentation, you see the cash flow and the related details. Well, I can tell you that we are continuing with our activities to limit the absorption of the net working capital. We talked about this before, and we told you which are the items which affect the difference in the net working capital, 120 million difference, which are due to the COVID-19 emergency. 60 million are related to payments in arrears at Acea Energia, and 60 million are related to a deferred collection of regulatory items. And we know that this is going to be a temporary issue that will be solved by the end of the year. And then we needed to record the income tax paid in the first half of this year, 45 million euros. Now, this is due to the tax deadlines. And last year, those taxes were paid in the second half of the year, not in the first half. So if we go to the last slide, which shows the net indebtedness of the group, the net debt at the end of June is at 3,527 million versus the 3,062 million at the end of 2019. As Giuseppe said before, on the 29th of January this year, we issued a bond worth worth of 500 million euros with a fixed rate of 0.5%, and this bond has a 9-year term. Now, as you can see, the structure of the debt, 82% is fixed rate, 1.82 is average interest rate, and the average term is 5.85. The average cost of the debt is 1.82%, and the rating of the group is stable, outlook stable, both by Fitch and Moody's, and Fitch gave us a rating of BBB+, and Moody's Baa2, both, however, with a stable outlook. Well, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Fabio. Thank you, Giuseppe. At this point, we can take your questions. This is the Chorus Call conference operator. We will now begin the question and answer session. Anyone who wishes to ask a question may press star and one on the touchtone. To remove yourself from the question queue, please press star followed by 2. We kindly ask you to use the handsets when asking questions. Anyone who has a question to ask may press star and 1. The first question is by Enrico Bartoli, the main source. Now, good evening, everyone. I have a few questions to ask. First of all, your guidance. Can you please give us a few details about the drivers that led you to increase guidance versus the previous one? And then I have a few questions about the water business. Can you give us some details about the increase of tariffs in the first 6 months of the year? ATO2 and ATO5 and ADF. And then you mentioned that the new regulatory scheme made up for the loss of a bonus on quality and the recognition of other costs. Can you give us some details about the regulatory changes in the water business? And then a question about supply. There was an increase in the number of customers in the free market despite the COVID-19 emergency. What are the prospects in terms of commercial activity in the second half, considering that the commercial activity went well in a difficult period? I would expect an acceleration and an impact on margins. Can you confirm this trend? Thank you. Well, thank you. Thank you for your questions. We'll take them now. Now, let me answer your question about the guidance that we issued. Now, going back to the first page, our EBITDA is growing by 13%, but what is more important is the organic growth of EBITDA, which is about 8% in this first half of the year. Now, taking into account that net of the growth of the group and the consolidations, the organic growth of the EBITDA of the group is above 8%. And such growth is driven mainly by the regulated businesses. And so we believe that at least in the second half, we will be able to grow the EBITDA similar to the organic growth of the first half. And so we believe that the organic growth, the EBITDA growth within the end of the year will be above 8%. We are not giving you the precise figure because we are moving in a context which has some which has some variabilities within our business. Now, as you said, our commercial activity went well despite the COVID-19 emergency, and going forward, we can have some positive surprise there. What we need to say that in the commercial business, and considering the growth of our customer base, I am confident that we are witnessing an acceleration trend. And so in the second part of the year, we may expect a growth of customers in the free market with better results versus the one we had in the first half. Of course, in the first half, we had negative impacts of COVID-19, and we managed to make up for such an impact. We had to work hard on OPEX, operating costs. So in the second half, we may have to invest a bit more commercially, and so we may see a slight increase of operating costs here because we need to invest. But I'm confident that we shall have growth of our customers, so we will be able to bear a growth of commercial costs and advertising costs. And then Fabio will take the other questions. Now, as to the growth of tariffs for the main companies of the group, we can say that ATO 2, 2%, ATO 5, 7% in terms of tariff increase, 0% Gori, and 1.5% Acquedotto del Fiore, ADF. Well, it is worth, however, remembering that the tariffs periods are under review, and the review is not over, but we can consider the data I gave you as the ones that reflect the considerations about the numbers of the group. As to the application of the third tariff period and the cost recognition, as we said before, well, the effect here is mainly to be related to the recognition of sludges, and then another thing that was recognized to the Acea group is that we are very efficient on costs, and we are capable to improve our performance, and we are also working on trying to have commercial costs to be recognized, which will help us to make up for the lack of the bonus. Thank you. The next question by Fabiella Suarez, Mediobanca. Now, good evening. I have three questions to ask. The first, you mentioned the role of Acea in the restart of Italy, especially in the center and in the south of Italy, and your commitment to invest a bit more in the water business. Now, can you tell us whether you have made some proposals to the government to turn this process into a virtuous process? Now, second question, do you see the need to grow your provisions? Now, I saw that, by the end of the year, you probably will need to grow your total provisions. Can you confirm me this? Third, I read in the press about the possibility for the municipality of Rome may transfer part of AMA activities to a company controlled by Acea. How do you see this agreement, or what do you expect from such a possible agreement? Thank you. Thank you, Javier. Well, it is clear that the recovery fund was approved 2 weeks ago, and in this moment the government is working to define how to use the funds that Europe will give. Now, we certainly will play a very active role with all the institutions to be part of the process, but also to provide our skills and competencies and our investment capability to be added to the recovery fund, certainly for the construction of water infrastructure in the center and south, a bit, but also in all the other businesses we operate in, basically in the world of the circular economy. Now, the funds are available. The country has to accelerate the process to authorize the building of plants, especially in the center and in the south of the country, where there is a shortcoming of plants. But also, we are committed in renewable energy sources, especially photovoltaic. At the moment, the incentives are no longer available. The price of energy will not allow Italy to achieve its target for 2030, and so the government will put in place actions to develop further renewable sources of energy, and we are ready to play an active role in this process as well. Very rapidly, I'm going to answer the question about provisions. Well, we tend to be very, very cautious when it comes to the management of our accounts. Now, although we believe that we don't have a big risk when it comes to receivables, and we know that most of these credits will be reabsorbed by the end of the year, and there will be a little tail for next year. But at the moment, we identify some risk on part of these receivables, and for this reason, we increased our provisions for that. And so, if everything goes as expected, we should have a similar amount of provisions for the second part of the year, but it all depends on our receivables. As to the last question about AMA, these are news that appeared in the press, but we have had so far no contacts with the municipalities about AMA. Thank you. Stefano Gamberini has another question. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to have a few questions. The first one, now projects for the solar business. 40 megawatts new capacity that is going to be installed, but when is it going to be operating, and how much is it costing, and then is it merchant? And then 400 megawatt of pipeline. This is something that you intend to do, but in the short term, or is that medium to long term? I just want to understand how much acceleration power Acea has in this business. A second question about waste. Now, if my calculations are right, like for like, there is a decrease in the results by 12 million euros. You lost 18 million euros because of the lack of incentives, CIP6. So you make basically 6 million euros positive. What is the driver behind this 6 million euros? And then Your guidance for the year, you were talking about 100 million euros of M&As in the first part of the year. You already made 86 million of M&A. What can we expect here? And then my last question: an improvement in the tariffs in the water business, better than expected, related to the sludge treatment. Is it something structural, or is it something which we will not see in the next few years? So basically, is it a one-off, or is it something that will be there in the next few years in terms of advantage? Thank you. Well, thank you. I'll answer the first questions, and then the water tariffs and the sludge treatment will be answered by Fabio. So the photovoltaic, the solar plants, we have already received the authorization of 40 megawatt which are being built. 40 megawatt are 50% in industrial area and 50% in agricultural area. The latter are merchants. The one in industrial areas, well, here we take part in the bids, and we should get to a minimum value of the megawatt of around 65, 70 euros. And so building these plants on average costs 700 million euros of installed megawatt. This is the price today, although technology prices are slightly decreasing. So perhaps in the future we may spend a bit less for the individual megawatt. As to the pipeline of 400 megawatts, well, the pipeline is a pipeline. If you take a conservative view, 200 megawatts will be built. Now, 400 megawatts are part in agricultural areas, part in industrial areas. Now, our willingness to complete those in agricultural areas will depend on the price of energy. If the price of energy goes back to a level where an adequate return is possible, around 50 euros per megawatt, or perhaps we will go towards a public PPA for photovoltaic plants, which will allow to develop such plants regardless of the price of energy. As to your questions about waste and the waste tariffs, yeah, your calculation is right. We made up a good deal of the loss of the CIP6. We had greater volumes taken to our waste management plants, higher tariffs for waste management, and the waste-to-energy plant worked more versus last year, or the same thing last year. And so the operating performance basically had an impact also on the economic performance of this business. As to the M&A guidance, at the moment I don't have a figure. So far we've made 86 million worth of M&A, and then we have an acquisition, 51% of Alto Fango Distribuzione Gas. It should cost around 19 million euros, and this is already within our pipeline, and then we should have to see in autumn what we are going to do. If I had to say something, instead of 100 million, which was part of our initial guidance, we should perhaps move it up to 120 million euros, although some transactions are not to be taken for granted. Now, the net financial position guidance that we always give is compatible with this objective of 120 million euros of M&A. That's it. Let me give the floor to Fabio for your question about the sludge tariffs. Now, as to consider the recognition of sludges, well, that can be considered as a stable component of the tariff up until at least 2022. And so there's a little one-off which is related to the recognition of the item that Acea had not taken into account in previous years. But this being said, we can consider this part related to sludge as something structural within the tariffs recognized to the group. Now, as to the bonus that we did not receive, well, that was part of the efficiency of the group. Well, I could say that the commitment to quality and efficiency is something which is part and parcel with our work. And then let me say what I said before again. The increase in commercial OpEx, which are then related to tariffs, is at the moment perhaps not included in the performance of the period, but it's a component that we know is going to be or has to be taken into account. If I may, can I ask you a follow-up question? Well, you underlined that you talked about the photovoltaic plants, industrial or agriculture. Well, considering the number of customers that you have, wouldn't it be interesting to consider also mounting photovoltaic plants on the roofs of your customers? Well, yes and no. Now, internally, we try to exploit such opportunities. Now, 5 megawatts of the authorized 40 megawatts are located in an area owned by Acea, where we had to build a waste management plan very close to Malagrotta landfill in Rome. The plant was not authorized, and we converted this in a photovoltaic farm. Now, Acea does not own a lot of roofs, so to speak. Now, we have a few offices and a few infrastructures that are mostly underground. Now, we'll try to exploit all of our potentials, but now, in theory, theoretically, I don't see a big advantage about installing photovoltaic plants in roofs. Thank you. Manuela Oggione has the next question. Now, good evening. Thank you. Thank you very much. The first question is the following. How much is the additional EBITDA in the second part of the year related to the acquisitions that you've made, so as to understand the growth of EBITDA related to acquisitions made in 2020. Before, you mentioned Gori that did not have a tariff-related effect on the EBITDA, but has grown considerably year on year. And I guess that growth is related to synergies that you managed to extract or capture. And there you're very effective, I guess. And so I'd like to know, considering the the acquisition that you've made, especially in the waste business, what can that lead to, or what is the growth of the EBITDA related to these acquisitions and the possible synergies? Second question, I'd like to have perhaps I'd like to know what you expect from Acea in the water business. And the third question about the net working capital. From your calculations, you expect to have, or you said you were going to have 50 million euros of impact on the net working capital by the end of the year. And so that 15 million should be perhaps a bit lower at this point, considering what you've had in the first half of the year. And then another question about Peschiera. I thought I understood that the capex for the Peschiera project was already in your business plan. At least I wrote this when you signed the agreement with all the municipalities and also with the municipality of Rome to the renewal of the concession. And I had noted down capex for Peschiera, which I think is 802. So can I have some details about this? Emanuele, I'm sorry. You asked the details about the Acea Resolution 187, which is the one about the recognition of the COVID-19 costs. Is that the one you were referring to in your question? Yes, the one that was issued at the end of May. Which then, when the operators were to put forward their requests, and then the authority was to answer. Now, a lot of questions. Let's try to answer all these questions. As to the acquisitions that are impact on the EBITDA, let us go back to page 6 of the presentation. Now, Acquedotto del Fiore, Consorzio Acqua Azul, this is a consolidation, not necessarily an acquisition. For the others, you need to multiply per 2. Many of these that were acquired, DEMAP acquired in July last year, and so the first half is basically growth versus last year, and then second half will be the same. Berg was acquired October last year, so it will all be growing. Ferrocard and so on, it will grow again because it was acquired this year. Simam March this year, growing again. Photovoltaic, almost all acquisitions were made in the second part of last year, so the EBITDA will grow here. So I don't have a figure to give you at this moment, but you can make a very simple estimate. As to the new acquisitions, Pescara Distribuzione Gas, that has a yearly EBITDA of around 5 million, and so the impact in 2020 will be 2.5 million. The other question that you asked was about the net working capital. Well, it's right. The COVID-19 impact, 60 million, because of payment arrears, is lower than the one we expect, and so we can have a lower impact by the end of the year. That's true. That's possible. But at the moment, I don't have a precise figure to give you. But at the end of the first quarter, we had an idea of what was going to happen. Now we have the overall results of the impact of COVID-19, and we hope we will do better by the end of the year. As to Peschiera, well, the business plan that you know included capex for Peschiera, but that was just the beginning of the investments there. The assumption that we communicated was investments of 400 million euros, which was not all part of the business plan because it was to be concluded in 2025-2026. Now we have clearer ideas. The high-level engineering activities have been concluded, and now we know much better what the investment will be. It will be overall an investment of around 700 million euros. Around 100 million euros will be represented by a grant on the part of the state, and the remaining will be recognized in tariffs in 6-8 years. So the new business plan that we will present in autumn will also include Peschiera, with the beginning of the activity in 2021, considering that all the authorization will go smoothly as expected. And so that plan, so Peschiera will be included in the new business plan, which will span until 2024. So after ATO 2, investments will then be recognized in ATO 2 tariffs. Now, in your question, you were asking a question about ARERA regulation, which was initially 187, and then it became ARERA regulation 295. It's no longer a consultation document. There was consultation document 187, and then it was turned into a regulation 295 of ARERA. Well, as to this question, we can tell you that the economic effect included, or for the first half of the year, basically 2 million of COVID-19 related costs were included in the cost recognition process, and then there are some other 2.7 million which are not part of this coverage. As to the GORI tariff, let me try and explain our assumptions. At the moment, we are assuming a growth by 0%. But the process that we described before was a refocusing of investments, including the COVID-19 emergency period. And so the water businesses focused more on continuing investments that had already started, where the building sites were open. It was not possible to open new, building sites during the COVID-19 emergency. These investments, I've said this before, are investments which are already part of the plan of the business, and therefore such investments will be included or will be recognized in tariffs. So the improvement of performance is driven by investments. Another component of the GORI company is related to cost efficiency and greater efficiency, a plan or a project that was started some time ago by the company that certainly has had an impact on the performance of this period. So you're not quantifying the synergies or the cost savings following the integration? No. No? Thank you. As a reminder, if you have a question to ask, you may press star followed by 1 on your telephone. There are no other questions from the conference call. Well, if that is the case, thank you very much. Of course, the Investor Relations Office is always open for you to have some other clarification. So thank you, and I hope you'll have some nice holidays. Thank you. This is the Chorus Call conference operator. The conference is now over. You may disconnect your telephones.